The Treaty of Allahabad, signed in 1765, was a landmark event in Indian history that significantly shaped the trajectory of British rule in India. It marked the consolidation of British power in the Indian subcontinent after the Battle of Buxar, which took place in 1764. This battle was a major conflict between the British East India Company and a coalition of Indian rulers. So let's dive into the full history and context of the Treaty of Allahabad. The Treaty of Allahabad was the culmination of a series of military, political, and diplomatic developments in the mid-18th century. After the Battle of Plassey in 1757, the British East India Company had gained control over Bengal. But, the battle was only the beginning of their growing influence in India. By the early 1760s, the British were becoming more involved in Indian politics, especially after the collapse of the Mughal Empire. The empire was weakening due to internal strife and invasions by external forces, such as the Afghan invasions. First, we have the Battle of Buxar in 1764. In this battle, the East India Company, led by Major Hector Munro, defeated a coalition of Indian rulers. This coalition included Shuja-ud-Dawla, the Nawab of Oud, and the Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II, who had allied with the other rulers. The defeat of the Mughal Emperor and the Nawab of Oud at Buxar gave the British a solid military foothold in northern India. After the battle, Shah Alam II, who was the Mughal Emperor, was captured and taken prisoner by the East India Company. His authority was essentially rendered symbolic, as the British now controlled large parts of northern India. The Mughal Emperor sought British protection, as his position was severely weakened. In return, he was willing to agree to terms that would allow the British to solidify their hold over key territories. The Treaty of Allahabad was signed in August 1765 between the British East India Company and Shah Alam II, with additional agreements with the Nawab of Oud, Shuja-ud-Dawla. The key terms of the treaty were quite impactful. For instance, the British East India Company was granted the Diwani, or the right to collect taxes, over Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. This gave the company control over the rich revenues of these territories, marking the beginning of British direct rule in the region. Shah Alam II was recognized as the Mughal Emperor, but in practice he became a figurehead with no real power. His position was maintained only because of British support. The British effectively became the real rulers of the Mughal Empire, with Shah Alam II remaining in Delhi but under British protection and influence. Shuja-ud-Dawla, the Nawab of Oud, was forced to sign a separate agreement, agreeing to pay a large indemnity and ceding parts of his territory to the British. In return, the Nawab retained control over his lands, but under British supervision and influence. The East India Company was granted the right to maintain a large military presence in Bengal, ensuring its dominance in the region. The treaty also laid the foundation for the company's monopoly over trade in Bengal, which would later extend to other regions of India. The Treaty of Allahabad had several far-reaching consequences that shaped the future of India. The treaty gave the East India Company control over tax revenues in Bengal, one of the wealthiest regions of India, thus providing it with the financial means to expand its power. The company began to act as a de facto ruler of much of India, and this treaty marked the beginning of formal British political dominance in India. The Mughal Emperor, Shah Alam II, retained the title but had no real authority. The British effectively controlled the administration of the Mughal Empire, further diminishing the power of the Mughal dynasty. The Mughal emperor became a symbolic figure, and his role in governance became largely ceremonial. The British began exploiting India's wealth, especially Bengal, through the Diwani rights. This laid the foundation for the economic drain that would continue throughout British rule in India, with wealth being extracted from India to Britain. The imposition of heavy taxes on peasants and the forced cultivation of cash crops, such as indigo and opium, led to widespread economic hardship and social unrest. The treaty ensured that the British East India Company had both economic and military control over large parts of India. This facilitated further expansion of British territories in India and was a stepping stone toward the establishment of the British Raj in 1858. The treaty set the stage for the Anglo-Indian relationship and deepened the British involvement in Indian affairs. Local rulers who had previously held power were reduced to subservience under British control, contributing to the breakdown of traditional Indian political structures. The treaty also created long-term social unrest, as British policies increasingly disrupted local economies, leading to widespread poverty, famines, and a general sense of alienation among the Indian population. The Treaty of Allahabad had a lasting impact on both India and the British Empire. It solidified British control over much of India and began a period of direct British involvement in Indian governance. The Mughal Empire effectively ended as the British took over administrative control. It set the stage for the future British expansion of power, culminating in the formal colonization of India in the 19th century. In summary, the Treaty of Allahabad was a pivotal moment in Indian history. It marked the beginning of British dominance in India, establishing a foundation for their colonial rule that would last until India's independence in 1947.